We are on our way to a place the Israelis call the capital of terror, Jenin. Half of all suicide bombers who have penetrated Israel have come from Jenin and its surrounding villages. To stop the deadly attacks, Israel has sealed most of the West Bank. And as we head deeper into Palestine, we are told by the Israeli soldiers that we cannot go on. This side, because there was a gunfight.
Just tell you, it's dangerous for you.
Eventually, we break the blockade by taking a series of back roads, and a day later, we arrive in the village of Aqaba near Jenin. Aqaba is home to one of Palestine's most famous martyrs, Izzeddin Masri. Izzeddin left here a month ago to carry out a gruesome deed. Strapped with explosives, he made it to Jerusalem and blew himself up, killing 15 Israeli civilians, including 6 infants, at a pizza restaurant in the city's centre. Izzeddin Masri came from one of the wealthiest families in the village. His father Abu Ayyad runs a successful restaurant in Jenin. Although he approves of his son's martyrdom, both parents are still in a state of disbelief.
والله مفاجأة كبيرة نعم. كانت مفاجأة كبيرة ومتصدمة علينا ولحد الآن الواحد بعين يطلعش علي كتلة الضنا أو الولد بضل غالي. نعم. احنا بنقول لاجل انه دخوله للجنه ان شاء الله الامل بالله مرتاح شوي مش مرتاح يعني انه عنه غاب عني الا احنا بنتامل ان شاء الله يكونوا مصيره الجنه الا برضه لا يزال يعني مثل صدمه علينا نزلت والله مثل الساعه نزلت من السماء علينا انا وامه طبعا اكثر ناس انا وامه
الدار انا مش متوقع منه انه يصلح الموصول هذا يعني لانه بكاش يبين عليه ولا اي حركه يعني ولا اي شيء ما وعيت الا الدار فجت الصياح صاروا يصيحوا كلياتهم بالدار يعني انا هسه عيات والله بحط كل اللوم على شارون وعلى الرؤساء الكبار كلهم على عرفات كلهم اللي ما يسووا لنا حل هالمشكله هاي يعني.
But Izzeddin did fit the profile of a suicide bomber. He was young, 23, contained and calm right up until he pulled the trigger. And this is what worries Israel. It's the seemingly normal young men who in greater numbers than ever before are choosing this option. It's no longer just the domain of religious fanatics.
كان شاب متزن شاب مؤدب شاب دين كويس من الشغل للبيت من البيت على الجامع هاي كانت صفات الولد كان شاب رايق كان كويس كثير معاملته مع الأم ومع الأب ومع أخوته كان مع الناس كان شاب كويس كثير.
While the whole village and the family bask in the glory of Izzeddin's martyrdom, his mother Fatima is probably the only person in the village who does not endorse her son's attack. For her, it's difficult to understand that her son packed himself with nails and explosives and then took his life to murder 15 innocent civilians and injure 90 more.
والله بحزن معاها وأواسيها يعني أنا لأني أنا قبل ما دريت إنه ابني اللي عمل العملية أنا لما أجوا أولادي قالوا لي تعالي يما في عملية الأولاد الإطفاء يعني أنا لما شفتهم يعني أنا حزنت عليهم يعني حزنت عليهم كأنهم يعني إيش اسمه لأنه قلت لك إحنا يعني الشعب ما ذنبه يعني مش ذنبه يعني لما إيش اسمه إحنا مش متوقعين إنه ابننا إحنا مدريناش الساعة 6:30 المغرب 7:30 المغرب بعد الأذان المغرب عرفنا يعني ما عرفنا إنه ابني يعني طبعا يوم إن عرفت إنه ابني حزنت أكثر يعني إحنا ما بنتمنى هذا للشعب بكلش بنتمناهوش يعني لا إلهم ولا إلنا يعني.
But around here, they're proud of what Izzeddin Masri did. His short life has been glorified. And it's not hard to find others who want to follow his example.
طبعا كثير شباب اخذوا مثلا افكار انهم يتمنوا الشهاده بيتمنوا المقاومه ويجهزوا حالهم يفتروا حالهم بالدفاع عن القدس الشريف عن دولتهم عن فلسطين عن تراب الوطن كثير يعني شباب بتمنوا إنه ما يطلبوا الشهادة هاي لأنه تبتعرف يعني الشاب مقبول عند ربنا لا حساب ولا عذاب.
These two say they are considering enlisting as suicide bombers. For them, it's not about international terror, like destroying New York's Twin Towers, it's about fighting Israel. Almost a year into the Intifada, Palestinian stones and gunmen provide no answer to the might of the Israeli army. To an outsider, it's an unthinkable act, but they have come to the conclusion that suicide attacks are the only effective weapon against Israel.
فيش وسيلة غير هاي الوسيلة اللي نقاوم فيها إحنا يعني فيش يعني وسائل كلها بنادق ورشاشة أما أفضل وسيلة يعني في وسائل بس يعني أسوي وسيلة وهذا يعني أضمن وسيلة إنه يتسوى فيه إنه الواحد يسوي نفسه يطلع يفجر نفسه يعني.
From Aqaba, it's about 20 kilometres to Jenin, the place where martyrs are made. During the first Intifada in 1987, Jenin was a stronghold of Fatah, Yasser Arafat's political party. Arafat promised the Palestinian people a state. But when he failed to deliver, many turned to the radical Islamist parties like Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And the problem for Israel is their support is growing every day. Since the beginning of the current Intifada, these parties have doubled their support right across the West Bank and Gaza. Most Islamist leaders in Jenin have gone underground. But on the third attempt, we secure a rare interview with a senior Islamic Jihad operative who calls himself Marwan.
كان الجهاد الإسلامي خلال الانتفاضة الحالية عبارة عن مجموعة من العمليات سلطت الأنظار باتجاه الجهاد الإسلامي، يعني هذا هو السبب المباشر توجه الناس وبالذات العمليات الاستشهادية.
As an Islamic Jihad leader who is promising more suicide attacks, it's no surprise the Israelis want Marwan dead. He's constantly on the move, changing cars and locations to avoid assassination.
في ناس كثيرة عندها الاستعداد تستشهد وفيش إمكانية لا للجهاد ولا لحماس ولا أي تنظيم أو تنظيمات مجتمع أنها تستوعب الناس اللي عندها رغبة أنها تستشهد. باستمرار ناس بتلح أنها بدها تستشهد يعني لكن فيش تنظيم أو جماعة عندها استعداد تستوعب الجميع.
Last week, with all eyes on America, Israeli forces moved into Jenin. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon called Yasser Arafat Israel's bin Laden. Electricity, telephones and water were cut. 3 Palestinians were killed and 11 more were injured. But last night, the siege of Jenin was lifted. We are on our way to Nablus, the other stronghold of Palestinian resistance, to examine what the Palestinians call state terrorism, the Israeli assassination policy. To get there, we have to exit the West Bank and try to come in further south. The day we arrive in Nablus, there's been an assassination attempt on senior Fatah military commander Jihad Musimi. It's almost a daily occurrence here, though the attempts are not always reported in the international media. Musimi survived the attack only because he managed to drag himself from his burning car before a second missile demolished it.
ولكن أنا ببلغ بالياسين ببلغ كمان شارون أن الشعب الفلسطيني سيبقى صامد، الشعب الفلسطيني سيبقى يقاوم، الشعب الفلسطيني لن تخيف آلة الدمار الصهيونية والأمريكية، بل على العكس كل ما يفعله ما يزيدنا إلا قوة وصمود.
One of Israel's biggest hits was here in Nablus on the 31st of July. 2 American-made Apache helicopters struck with rockets at the Hamas office in this residential building. 2 senior Hamas leaders were killed, along with 6 civilians. Sharon said this was a preventative strike against terror and would serve to protect his people. But just the opposite happened. This was the trigger for Hamas to send Izzeddin Masri to the Jerusalem pizza parlor. To the world, the Israelis sell their assassination policy as pinpoint preventative action. But it's not very accurate. 17 out of 60 killed so far have been innocent bystanders. On the day of the Nablus assassination, Nadia and Abdul Momen's two sons were waiting to see a doctor on the floor below the Hamas office. When the rocket struck, Bilal 10 and Ashraf 6 were killed instantly.
قلبي انجرح من جوا يعني يوم حسيت ولادي انهم استشهدوا حسيت يعني بحزن حزنت عليهم كثير يعني ولادي يوم حسيت انهم استشهدوا عشان اقول ماليش الا هم ولادي يعني اثنين وراحوا اثنين مع بعض.
Neither Abdul nor his family are political. They were good friends with an Israeli family with whom they shared a business. This will no longer stand as an example of how Palestinians and Israelis can live in peace.
يعني أنا مثلاً كنت أشتغل في إسرائيل وبكشريك يهودي في إسرائيل واشتغلت عند اليهود عشت عند اليهود أكثر ما عشنا عند العرب وبالآخر أجوا وقتلوا أطفالي فهذا إشي يعني بده يدل إنها كل الشعب الفلسطيني هون مستهدف وكل إنسان فلسطيني سواء بيطالب في حقه أو ساكت عن حقه أو مرابط على أرضه مستهدف وإسرائيل يعني بتنوي إنها تقتله.
وأشرف أبو خطر وشهداء محافظة نابلس
These are the militants the Israelis have tried to suppress by killing their leaders. The Palestinian martyr industry has been working overtime. Giant posters of the Hamas leaders who were killed in the Nablus raid, Jamil Mansour and Jamil Salim, take centre stage. The day is being held in their honour. Assassinating them has amounted to a call to war. Now as martyrs, they're used to whip up support for the Intifada and hatred of Israel. Hamas and Islamic Jihad proudly display their suicide bombers in waiting. The climax of the day is a pledge on the Quran. In a show of unity, gunmen parade their wares. Sharon's assassination policy has only served to deepen resistance and unite all the Palestinian factions.
على هذا الشعب أن يواصل حتى النهاية. طبعا بيعزز هاي الأمور هي الوحدة الوطنية والتلاحم زي ما أنت بتشوف الآن كتائب شهداء الأقصى فتح وكتائب عز الدين القسام وسرايا القدس في الجهاد الإسلامي لحمة واحدة صمموا وأكدوا وأقسموا على الثأر لدماء الشهداء ومواصلة النضال حتى تحرير القدس عاصمة الدولة الفلسطينية الأبدية.
But much of the popular anger is reserved for their own, for the Palestinian who betrays the cause and works with the dreaded Israeli Secret Service, the Shin Bet. Every successful assassination needs a Palestinian collaborator on the inside to provide the precise time and place to strike. This video was secretly filmed. It's the execution of a Hamas collaborator. The information he provided to the Shin Bet led to the death of 2 of his colleagues. Although Yasser Arafat has put a temporary halt to executions like these, 7 collaborators are still waiting on death row. To hinder the Israeli assassination campaign, the Palestinian Authority has intensified its hunt for collaborators, recently arresting 100 in the Nablus area alone. Mahmoud, not his real name, is one of them. He was providing the Shin Bet with information on a Hamas and Fatah activist.
بالفعل رحت راقبت هدول الاشخاص وبعدين اعطيته المعلومات يعني كاملة عنه.
Mahmoud has been working for the Shin Bet for about 2 years. He has lived in Nablus and in Israel. In Israel, Mahmoud had an extensive criminal record for theft and drug offences. Mahmoud says the Shin Bet told him they were going to jail him for life if he did not work for them. It's likely Mahmoud will not be executed because he has cooperated fully with the Palestinian Authority.
بالفعل يعني بعد ما خلصت التحقيق يعني المحقق نفسه شكرني قال لي انت هاني صح غلطت وضريت وإشي وهذا بس بنفس الوقت ساعدتنا كثير. الناس اللي كنت بدك تراقبهم انت لا سمح الله هدول كانوا بدهم يقتلوهم، انت بجوز تعرفش انهم بدهم يقتلوهم، هم كانوا بدهم يقتلوهم ولحقنا قدرنا ننقذ حياتهم قبل ما يصير فيهم اي إشي.
But it's Mahmoud's family who will pay the biggest price for his betrayal. They live here on the outskirts of Nablus and they do not know the real reason for his arrest. But the family will become known as a collaborator family. They will be ostracised and cast out of the community.
ما فيش عين يشوف أهله الواحد فيها. ما فيش عين يشوف أهله يعني ولا يشوف مرته ولا يشوف يعني أنا بقول لك أنا لو يوم من الأيام طلعت من السجن ما راح أروح على دار أهلي. راح أطلع من هون يعني بالدغري ولا راح أشوف حدا. لأنه ما بقدر أشوف حدا.
Back in Israel, Prime Minister Sharon's policy to hit back harder doesn't appear to have won the war. An unprecedented number of suicide bombers, 67 according to the army, have brought their deadly wares into Israel. The army says they have no choice but to act against the suicide bombers.
We are not going to wait to have new victims, children, women, just people, and then to act. If the Palestinian Authority is not capable or maybe refused to arrest these people or to stop the terrorist process, we have no other choice but to act in order to protect ourselves. I would say it is a self-defensive measure that all the world, I believe, can understand.
And as the Defence Force plans for a campaign until 2006, it will rely more heavily on the Shin Bet. Moshe Kuperberg was a senior Shin Bet officer in charge of recruiting Palestinian agents and collaborators. He was also an investigator and interrogator who retired from the service in April 1999.
The intelligence, to my mind, is the most important thing. It's the most important thing because it feeds the military one and the political one. It gives them the information they need in order to achieve some agreements or assassinations.
It's crucial.
It's crucial. With no intelligence, there's nothing you can do.
The Shin Bet has been conducting an unseen war in the occupied territories. These pictures offer a rare glimpse of the agents at their deadly work. They come from the Security Service's own website. Here, they are arresting suspected Palestinian militants. Agents go undercover, immersing themselves in Palestinian communities, speaking Arabic and dressing as Palestinians. They recruit and manage a huge network of Palestinian collaborators.
Some groups, like the Fatah, Hamas, Jihad Islami, Jabha Shabi, the Popular Front, the Democratic Front, we consider them to be nests of terror. In order to prevent this terror, you have to do many things. One of the things is to penetrate them, learn them, know who are their agents, where do they hide or keep the ammunition and the explosives, who is helping them, who is serving them here, what are the means and the ways of communications, who is supporting them financially. You will not know it by, dreaming at night. You should be within them, and it is better that your agent will be considered or will serve in one or more of those terror nests as an active member, and then you can act.
And did you have good success at this?
Personally, or as a
the overall policy, Shin Bet?
Yeah, I have wonderful.
A collaborator we spoke to claims Israel has 15,000 Palestinians working for the Shin Bet. Moshe Kuperberg says they have Palestinian spies in the senior leadership of every Palestinian faction. When you penetrate an organisation, how deep can you get? I mean,
to the top.
Really? You've been all the way to the top?
All the way to the top. I mean, when I mean to the top, I don't mean Mr. Arafat, but definitely to the top.
And have those people obviously not been revealed, or are they still working?
Some of them has been revealed, and all the others are not to be discussed here.
This illustration shows how the Nablus assassination of 8 happened. First, an Apache marks the spot with a laser, and the second delivers the rockets. But the crucial information, the location of the human targets, was provided by a Shin Bet operative and his collaborators on the ground. In this case, the collaborator was a Hamas activist. Kuperberg's colleague, Shimon Ramah, who was head of the Shin Bet in the West Bank until 1993, explains the deadly precision of such operations.
If you want to how you call it, liquidation? No?
Yeah,
liquidation. If you want to liquidate somebody, you have to have an exact information about when he's leaving his place, with what car, which direction, whom will be with him, all these details, and you have to cover him very, very good, because you need to be in a certain place, in a certain time. I mean, every second counts, and every road counts, so you have to be perfect.
Israel justifies its assassination policy on 2 grounds. It claims the policy minimises both Israeli and Palestinian civilian casualties and acts as the first line of defence against terrorist attacks.
We also have some, proofs that we eliminated lots of terror acts by using this policy. It does not mean that terror acts will not happen again. But this is, it's fighting with a snake that everybody, you cut the head and it grows again. You cut the head and it grows again. That's it.
We know that we are under the criticism of the media and the political world all over. And we still go on with it. Now, knowing that we will reconsider every time we will know that there are civilians there, because we know that the minute that we will exaggerate with these operations by killing civilians, we will, in a way, we will shorten our ability to continue with this policy.
There are those within Israel who argue against the policy of assassination. Jessica Montel is executive director of B'Tselem, an Israeli human rights group. She argues the assassinations are nothing more than extrajudicial killings, where the defence forces act as judge, jury and executioner.
There's no official statements about the person, no presentation of evidence before or afterward in any sort of, judicial process.
She's also highly critical of Shin Bet's recruitment methods.
Israel pressures Palestinians to collaborate, both in torture and interrogations, pressure on family members to get other family members to collaborate, refusing to give Palestinians permits to work in Israel, permits to travel abroad. I mean, any permit that you need from Israel, the General Security Service could make that conditional on you providing information to Israel.
We don't know why Palestinian Rami Barhom chose to work for the Shin Bet, but he did for 28 years. He now represents 1,700 collaborators who, for their safety, have been relocated to Israel. Rami wants the Israeli government to give collaborators citizenship and compensation.
מדינת ישראל מאז ומתמיד ולתמיד לא תוכל להמשיך להתקיים ללא אותם משתפי פעולה. חד משמעית.
Rami and his community of collaborators live here in this Jewish settlement north of Jerusalem. They are a lost community, rejected by all. Like Rami, a few have been given new identities, but most live in fear.
מצב בלתי נסבל מכל הבחינות. יש כאלה שסובלים ממצב מבחינה מסוימת, אחד, אבל לגבי אותם המשת"פים, המצב שלהם הוא גרוע מכל הבחינות.
מה אתה מתכוון? במה זה בא לידי ביטוי?
כלכלית, ביטחונית, חברתית, משפחתית וכדומה. כשאני אומר בכללית, אז זה אומר הכל. מצב על הפנים.
Many of the collaborators have been forced back into Palestinian areas to work for the Shin Bet again. They are marked men as Palestine is conducting an assassination program of its own.
That these were covert operations for the Palestinian intelligence, because these people were very dangerous and they were leading their operations of spying and passing the information from the areas under the protection of the Israeli army. So there had to be some covert operations to liquidate these people because of their dangerous and criminal participation in the killing of Palestinians.
With such a dirty war on both sides, it's difficult to see how last night's ceasefire can be maintained. The Palestinian uprising has turned moderates into radicals and hardened the Israelis against a negotiated peace. But both sides have responded to efforts by the United States to build a worldwide coalition against terrorism. And if last week's horror in America can achieve this and bring them back to the table, then something good will have come out of last week's catastrophe.